welcome to Oscar Launch for another edition of A Taste of Oscar Launch Christmas edition. Today we're going to be making mincemeat. Mincemeat is one of those wonderful foods that we prepare in anticipation of Christmas and serving mince pies. And so, very simple process, only 2 steps to it really. You mix the ingredients and then the next day you heat them in the oven for 2-3 hours. And then it all comes together and then you put it into jars. And of course you use it to make mince pies. Just a little bit about that tradition. You'll probably notice when I tell you the ingredients, well, these are very similar, almost the same ingredients to making Christmas pies, Christmas cakes, Christmas puddings. They all seem to have the same type of spices, the same type of fruit, dried fruit, peel and suet and brown sugar and things like that. So indeed it's true. We often use the mixed spices, we use cinnamon, we use nutmeg, various types of raisins and currants, dark brown sugar. I'm using muscovado today. You can use demerara or just plain simple brown sugar. We also have some cranberries in today's recipe and some peel, some mixed peel. And the mixed peel that I have is lemon, orange, and cedrat. I'm also using some suet. Now I weighed the suet, 8 ounces of suet, and I'm going to take it and put it through the grater and make it grated suet. I have my mixed spices here. I have some almond slivers, and of course some other extra fruit. Apples, oranges, and some lemons. So basically we're going to just chop up the apples quite finely. Now these apples are a variety called Northern Spy apples. Now my recipe is a British recipe, so it doesn't call for Northern Spy apples, it calls for Bramley apples. My friend Helen, who's from Quebec City, swears by Northern Spy apples in her family's traditional mincemeat recipe. So I decided this year to look for Northern Spy apples. These are apples that come out at the end of the season. So I just got these this past weekend. They're pretty hard to come by here in Montreal, so you won't find them anywhere. And because the growing conditions here are not always ideal for this variety of apple, it's usually hit and miss where you're going to get them. I know that Quinn Farm in the West Island, Anil Perot had them this year, but I didn't get out there. It's an hour away from me. But I finally found them at Atwater Market this past weekend, and the supplier was the only supplier at the market who had them, and he only had 2 boxes of them. So I took some for my recipe, and my friend Helen arrived on her trusty bicycle and got the rest for hers. Her family recipe requires a lot of apples. Mine require 8 ounces. So 8 ounces basically corresponds to 2 of these apples. And you're going to take the oranges and the lemons, you're going to zest them, and then you're going to use the juice from them into the mixture. In terms of nutmeg, one of the things that I like to use for this is nutmeg that you grate. And so I have my trusty grater here, and I'm going to grate some into it later. I think it tastes fresher to me. And of course the spices are cinnamon and simple allspice. So basically what we're going to be doing now, we're going to start chopping and grating, and then we're going to mix them all, and then of course the next step is to cook it really, and then you put it into jars. Now this amount is a small recipe. It's from Delia Smith, a British recipe, and it's for 6 pint jars, so 6 500 milliliter jars, and so that's more than enough for me. I like mince pies, but I don't love mince pies. I eat them at Christmas time, and then I don't normally eat them for the rest of the year, but some people do. So the recipe that I say I had is a British recipe, so My ingredients have all been weighed. And so you might want to invest in, if you don't already have, a simple little kitchen scale. They are wonderful, especially when you're using European recipes, which tend to have weighed ingredients instead of cups measures that we do in North America. So that's it for the first stuff. So we're going to come back and I'll have all of these things chopped up and we'll be ready to put them in the bowl. So join me in a second or two. And so I've shredded all of my suet and my apples, and of course I zested my orange and my lemon and also juiced them as well. So now we're ready to come together now, and we're going to put all of our ingredients together into the bowl, and we're going to leave it overnight. Some of you might be interested or thinking, did he forget something? There's no meat. Mincemeat, no meat. And if you thought mincemeat had meat in it, you wouldn't be terribly wrong, because till about Victorian times, or at least at the 20th century, mincemeat often had meat in it, actually. And through Victorian times, it came to be replaced with just the raisins and currants, cranberries, peel, and things like that. The last remnant of meat is actually the beef suet. Incidentally, if you have somebody in your family, or if you yourself is a vegetarian, you can have vegetarian suet. You can buy it actually online. It's harder to find real bona fide beef suet. You have to have a really good butcher who butchers his own animals. And so if you have a butcher like that, you can get suet all throughout the year. But in most places, it's very, very hard to source. And so many people have taken to buying the vegetarian suet, which is more readily available in even online. So let's start mixing things. And so I'm going to just look at my recipe, because often I forget things. So we're going to take the zest of 2 oranges and 2 lemons. Look at the lovely little zest that you get. I have this great zester, and it really gives you nice little pieces of zest. And so I've zested 2 oranges and 2 apples and 2 lemons. And so here we have 8 ounces of apples. So for my apples, the Northern Spy, it gave 2 apples, which I've cut up in very, very tiny pieces. So we're going to put that in. One of the reasons why my friend Helen, actually the apples that you can use any apple really in your mincemeat. It's best to find the apples that take longer to cook down, because this is going to go into the oven on very low heat, mind you, tomorrow for about 3 hours. So you want something that's not going to really break down. So now you're going to take the candied peel. Now the candied peel that I have is made of orange and lemon and cedrat. So I have 8 ounces of that, which I'm going to add to my bowl. I probably should be using the spoon, shouldn't I? Now my fingers are all dirty. Anyway, live and learn. And then you're going to add a pound of cranberries, so just a little more than often a bag that you get. So you just throw them right in here. They're going to cook down, actually, so don't worry about them being big right now, because they will cook down. And there you're going to add the sugar and the dried fruits. So we're going to have 2 ounces of almonds. I have slivered almonds here. So you just take you can buy them already slivered if you want, or just cut them up or put them in the food processor and sliver them. And you used blanched or unblanched ones as well. So we're going to add I've mixed all of my raisins, currants, and sultanas all together. So basically there's 28 ounces of dried fruit here. So however you like, I have 12 ounces of just regular raisins, 8 ounces of currants, and 8 ounces of sultanas. Now, what's good are the actually muscat or the Lexia raisins, but they're often hard to find as well. You don't always get them, and so you have to get them strike while the iron is hot. So if you see them, pick them up. This year I didn't find any, so I don't have them. I just use some Thompson raisins, some sultanas, and some currants. To that, I'm going to add 12 ounces of brown sugar. So I told you I use Muscovado. That's a sugar that you can always get. You can get it at British stores. You can get Demerara as well, or you can just use plain brown sugar. It really doesn't make a difference. So I use this dark Muscovado because it's an unrefined sugar, and it has the original molasses content in it as well. So you get that little molassesy taste from this particular brown sugar. And from that, you're going to add your spices, basically a half a teaspoon of cinnamon and 4 teaspoons of allspice. So add that together. And then we're going to grate up some nutmeg. And so you have this wonderful little rasp that I find it's great. So you can add some nice, fresh nutmeg here. And it gives it a beautiful taste. So you can use almost a whole bean of it. Just be careful with your fingers. And that's the same thing when I was shredding all of these things earlier. It's just, especially when you're shredding suet, it's so hard. That's why I keep my suet in the freezer, so that it's easier to shred. And if not, you'll end up invariably cutting yourself on the grater. So just give that all a mix again. It's good to mix it all up nicely because it's going to sit for 12 hours. I sit it overnight before I make it. So I bet you very few of you knew there was actually a day of mincemeat. I guess it's a pretty niche market. I noticed it, as I said earlier, I think, looking for something for a work event this week, a topic, and I thought, oh, okay, maybe there's an international day of this or an international day of that. And so it's October the 26th is International or National Mincemeat Day. Now, I don't know where this site's from. I don't think it's a Canadian site, so it's probably an American site, and so they called it International or National Mincemeat Day. So who knew? But anyway, I guess it would be a pretty niche market. So here is the 8 ounces of suet. So when suet comes out, it looks almost like grated cheese, really. It's really soft and like that. So it's not the consistency of lard. So if you're thinking if you get something that's consistency of lard, that's not suet. And so you have to grate it because it's harder and it's kind of flaky, and so it looks like it's hard, like looks like hardened lard or something, but it's not lard. It's a different thing altogether. So you've put that all together, and then of course we'll add the juice from our lemons and our good catch, Charles. There was a seed. And that's why I had taken this and set it out, but I forgot to use it. Because I often, I don't know if you're like me, but when you're squeezing lemons, sometimes lemons are so full of seeds, and so you invariably get 1 or 2 seeds in your actual mixture. So the only other ingredient you're going to use tomorrow, you're going to have some brandy after it cooks. So you're going to basically put it in the oven for 3 hours on a very low temperature. It's going to slow cook, and then you're going to add 6 tablespoons of brandy, and then you're going to put it into your jars. And then keep it until you're ready to use it for Christmas and make lovely mince pies. Now, mince pies, often in Canada we call them mince tarts, but because they're the smaller ones. But in Britain we call them mince pies. They're not the large 9-inch or 8-inch pies, but the rather little tartlet size ones. And so you often have it perhaps with some mulled wine closer to Christmas, or even a cup of tea or something wonderful like that. So this is basically step one of mincemeat. So here's what it looks like in the bowl. You're probably thinking it looks very similar to my fruitcake mixtures or the mixture that I made for the Christmas pudding, but they're all slightly different, and the cooking process is different for each of them as well. So I'll be back for the next step tomorrow. See you then. Well, welcome back. We're now a day later after we mixed up all of these wonderful fruits and suet and citrus peel. And so, look, it's still nice and moist. It's nice and rich. So what we're going to do now, we're going to put it in the oven at 275 degrees for 3 hours. And we're going to cover it just loosely with some foil. And then we'll come back and then we'll let it cool, and then we'll put some brandy in it. And then, of course, we're going to put it into jars. Now, the thing is with the suet is going to render down, and then the suet is going to seal in all the wonderful juices and things. And so from there, it will preserve the mincemeat for the next year. So here we are, we're in the roaster. So we've got all that wonderful juice. Now this is going to make, as I say, 6 pints. So we're just going to cover this now with a couple of slices of foil and just cover it ever so loosely, and then put it in the oven at 275 degrees for 3 hours, and then we'll take it out, let it cool, and then put the brandy in, and then of course we'll be able to put it into the jars. So here we go. So it's been 3 hours in the oven, so now we're going to have the great reveal. And so we have our mincemeat, and as the recipe says, you're going to think it's swimming in fat, and actually it basically is a bit of fat. And here it's the suet that's rendered down to a liquid form. So we're just going to give that a good stir, and so you're going to let it basically cool down for, well, a while, until it's actually cool, I guess. So probably it's going to be maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours maybe. And then when it's cool, you're going to add 6 tablespoons of brandy to this mixture before you put it into jars. And so, but this is normal that you have the fat like this. It's the fat will coagulate, and then we're going to it will probably give it a little dull color, because as the fat coagulates, it's going to give it a dull appearance, and it's going to seal in all those wonderful flavors from the fruit and from the other additions. So don't worry about that. And so it smells beautiful, and so we'll be back shortly to put it into jars and add the brandy. So as it cools, just keep giving it a stir from time to time. That will help it, and it'll be delicious. So, why would you want to buy mincemeat from a jar when you can make your own? And it's so simple, only a couple of steps really, and it's there. So, indeed, see you in a bit. And so now we've let the mincemeat mixture cool, and now you see that it's not as liquidy as it was earlier, because the suet is coagulated a little bit, and so it's brought it all together. But now we're going to add about 6 or so tablespoons, about a third of a cup of brandy to this mixture. And we're going to mix it in and give it, again, a good stir so that the brandy is mixed all through. So you have a nice, rich alcohol flavor to your mincemeat. I just tasted it just before, and it's a wonderful taste. Now, in the earlier shot, what you probably saw were the cranberries really kept their shape even after 3 hours in the oven. So I just pushed them down and broke them up a bit with my spoon so that they would all come together. And of course, it released the lovely juices from it as well. So all of those flavors are all married together now, and they'll be preserved in the suet, because the suet is going to really keep the flavors in. And you'll see as it cools even more in the jar, it might turn a little grayish because of the suet, but that's normal. And when you heat it up to make your mince pies, you'll not see that. You'll show this wonderful rich color that we have here. So now we're going to put them in the jars. As I said, this recipe makes about 6 pints, so I'm just going to fill one of the jars. Now I have just put them in the oven at 350 for 5 minutes just to make sure that they're sterilized. And so you're just going to fill them here. Get them nice and packed. Now, of course, when we put their lids on, we're going to clean the tops of them so they'll seal properly. And normally with the suet, it should be fine because it's going to keep them nicely sealed. So here you go. This is what it looks like, a nice little jar of mincemeat. And so you can either make mince pies, or you might even want to give it away as a gift for Christmas. Put a lovely little cover on top or a little label, and give them away as gifts for Christmas, mincemeat. And of course, we normally make pies as little tiny tarts, as they're called in Canada, mince tarts, closer to Christmas. So enjoy.